Well, the reviews for the DNC are in, and across the political spectrum, on media outlets as far left as ABC News to those as far left as NBC News, people pretending to be journalists all agree that this Democrat convention was a joy-filled, folksy, all-American, joy-filled, totally normal, full of joy, freedom-loving gathering of utterly joyful baby-murdering communists pretending to ignore anti-Semitic, pro-Islamist terrorist protesters just long enough to get elected when they can capitulate to them entirely, and also full of joy. The only sour note came from grumpy, non-joyous Republicans who attacked Democrats for offering free abortions and vasectomies outside the convention center. Republicans are deeply concerned that if Democrats have too many abortions and vasectomies, there won't be any more Democrats, and Republicans might accidentally win an election and have to govern, which sounds much harder than talking tough on Fox News. Indoors, the joyful, folksiness began with a touching, joy-filled, all-American farewell speech by Joe, whatever his name used to be, who was joyously dragged on stage by Nancy Pelosi while he dug his fingernails into the floor, leaving inch-deep scratch marks as he joyously screamed, "I don't want to go. Please don't make me go." Far-left media outlets like CBS and even some far-left outlets like PBS, oh wait, maybe it's PBS that's on the far left and CBS that's on the far left. I always get those two confused because there's only one letter of difference between them and they're both communist. But anyway, CBS and PBS and all the BS in between agreed that Biden's farewell speech was a joy-filled, touching, tear-filled, joy-filled, touching, joy-filled tribute to whatever it was he was talking about. A joy-filled Biden told the joy-filled crowd, quote, "Sure, I thought I could win re-election, but Nancy Pelosi quietly explained that if I didn't step down, she would cut off my testicles and wear them for earrings. And so, with a great sense of regret and also terror, because what a horrifying image that is, Nancy Pelosi wearing my nuts for earrings. Holy crap, no wonder I can't remember who I am, or even what the end of this sentence is. But my legacy is clear. I passed all kinds of bills with things in them. And now the price of bread is more than 50% higher than it was when I took office. But I can afford that because I've made tens of millions of dollars peddling my influence to America's enemies. So at least I'm not like that stab in the back SOB Obama who ripped off Netflix for a fortune to make god-awful movies. So now Netflix can't afford to let your grandmother share your subscription anymore. And she just sits around wondering where all those nice black Victorian Englishmen on TV went and hoping they didn't escape into real life where they scare the hell out of her. And now I'm very sleepy, so I have to go back to napping and being the leader of the free world," unquote. Biden's joyful speech was followed by joyful speeches by the joyful Obamas. First, Michelle Obama joyfully told the joyful crowd, quote, "Donald Trump is trying to make people afraid of Barack and me because we're two college-educated black people who are trying to destroy America from within. And that's racist. We're not trying to destroy America because we're black. We're trying to destroy America because we're college-educated and have therefore been stripped of our capacity to reason and feel gratitude. So let's reject racism and come together to tear this country to pieces in the name of outlandish, anti-factual ideologies that could only be mistaken for reality after 4 years of relentless indoctrination, not to mention drugs," unquote. Barack Obama then followed his wife with a speech celebrating his legacy of giving nukes to Iran and making it impossible for your grandmother to share your Netflix subscription. Finally, Kamala Harris ended the convention by appearing in the form of a hologram who declared that America needs to take a new way forward to the old way backward, so vote for her. When asked why the real Kamala couldn't appear instead of a phony three-dimensional image, DNC officials said that was the only Kamala they had. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back, laughing our way through the fall of the Republic. We're going to talk about all the things. First, let me remind you that A Woman Underground, the new book, at number 4 in the Cameron Winter Mystery Series, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Please pre-order it. It really makes a big difference if we can push this thing onto the bestseller list and keep the series going. I've got the 5th one already. My wife says it's great, so that's the only reader I've had so far, but I think it's one of the best books ever. So, and I think this is terrific, and this is the one about where I deal with a lot of the backstory, a lot of the things that Winter has been carrying around in his heart, his old girlfriend that he's been sort of mooning over through the whole series now comes back into his life, and he has to enter into a kind of the world of American politics. It's not a political novel, but it's a world about where we are politically, violence on both sides, and he has to maneuver through it. He's a totally unpolitical character trying to find this woman that he loved. So I think it's really good, and I hope you'll go and pre-order it. I think you'll enjoy it. I hope you saw our terrific interview with Batya Ungar-Sargon. I'm getting letters from all over the world about that. And that was about how the media became corrupt. This week, we're going to interview Michael Duran of the Hudson Institute, who's a very original, very hard-boiled observer of the Middle East, and we'll talk about him. Please, wherever you get the show, on YouTube or on DailyWire Plus, or just on the streets, if you just buy it from a guy standing on the corner, leave a comment, and if the comment is illegal, possibly censor-worthy, if it should really destroy your career, we will read that comment on the air, because that's how we roll. Today's comment is from Lubo Mr. Razik. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. 5545. It says, "Come on, O bald Gandalf, tamer of preternatural beauty, heavenly wordsmith, thou knowest that thou is a singular word, and thus cannot proceed. Peasants." Absolutely. The name of the show was Silence Thou Peasants, and it should have been Silence Ye Peasants. And the problem is it's been so long since Queen Elizabeth and I sat and talked together that I sometimes forget my Elizabethan English. Let's get to today's episode, the Queendom of Feelz. Now, I'm going to be talking about the DNC, the Democratic National Convention today, but before, I just want to remind you that we always tell you here that you get tomorrow's news today. And if you go back and look at some of the backstages we've done when Trump accepted Biden's offer to debate, I was the one in the panel who said, everybody else was saying, oh, Trump has fallen into a trap. And I said, no, he's a lion eating raw meat. He knew exactly what he was doing. The debate night, if you go back and watch the backstages debate night, right before the debate began, I said that Biden is past medicating and Trump has a new discipline, and this could be a blowout. That's the way it turned out. And several weeks ago, I talked about the fact that this is a very male, very female versus very female election. And Media Matters made fun of me and attacked me and all this stuff. And now everybody is saying it, but you heard it here first. And all this, I'm not saying this to brag, although, of course, why shouldn't I brag when I'm right about everything? But I'm saying it because I'm going to tell you something new. And I want you to understand that this is something you're not going to hear anywhere else until maybe 3 weeks from now, after Media Matters attacked me, and then all the people start saying it. You know, when I talk about a male-female election, now everybody's saying that, but it's not a healthy male-female election. It's not a healthy interaction between men and women. There are only two kinds of people in the world, men and women. That's it. Everybody else is pretty much the same. And men and women are different in a potentially complementary way, right? In a happy marriage, they complement each other and they correct each other. Like women tend to err on the side of mistaking their emotions for reality, and men tend to err on the side of thinking that their reason is above their emotions, not realizing how much their emotions shape their reason. So, you know, both of them have errors and both of them have very powerful strengths. And in a happy marriage, you become one flesh and they sort of correct each other. They're complementary. They work each other out. And, you know, most happy marriages look something like Ephesians, where the woman cedes the governing power to the male, and the male gets rid of his selfishness and takes his wife's happiness as his own. That works out very well. But all of us are individuals, and that is going to look different in every marriage. And if your marriage is happy, you're not answerable to anybody. It doesn't matter what your priest says. It doesn't matter what your imam says. You're doing it right. You know, that's how that works. The problem with feminism, and as I've said often, it's not that feminism wasn't approaching real problems. It's that feminism, like everything else, just becomes leftism. It's not that I don't want women to have rights. It's that feminism, anti-racism, gay rights, they all just get taken over by leftism, and they all just become about consolidating power. And you know this because the minute a woman stands up and says, I disagree, she's discounted. The minute a black guy stands up and says, I disagree with the left, he's discounted. He's just, you know, falling into the Stockholm syndrome. The minute a gay guy, same thing. Because it's all about the leftism. And that is my problem with these things. It's not actually the problem they're trying to solve. It's the answer is always leftism. And feminism, leftist feminism, sets men and women against each other. And if you think this through logically, what happens when people with traits and flaws are set against each other? They stop, those traits and flaws stop being complementary, stop being a delight, and stop working each other out and kind of leveling each other off, and they become magnified, and you get uber men and you get uber women. And I've talked about the fact that after feminism in the movies, in the old days, a man could go to a woman's movie and enjoy it, a Bette Davis movie, something like that, now Voyager, very enjoyable movie, and a woman could go to a gangster movie, a man's movie, and not feel like she was being left out. Whereas at some point, after feminism, you got these uber men like Schwarzenegger and Stallone, and no woman wanted to go. It was just things blowing up, which I love, but no woman wants. My wife doesn't go to those movies with me. And women's movies became intolerable to men. They just became these rom-coms that were unwatchable. And that's what's happening, and that's the kind of battle we're having here. It's not a battle between men and women. It's a battle between uber men and uber women. So on the right, you get Trump, and we who like Trump don't always see how off-putting he can be, how overbearing, and this is why I think Trump should talk more about that, and I think he's starting to do that. And on the left, you get the DNC that was very effective, I think, for women and for men who think like women, but a total fantasy. And that's what we're going to look at today. Many people can tell you that there's nothing more annoying than when blinds let in that sliver of light at the crack of dawn. Unless you're a morning person, look, if you've seen one sunrise, you've seen them all. Now, there's a better way to buy blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery, and it's called 3-Day Blinds. They are the leading manufacturer of custom window treatments in the U.S., and right now, they're running a buy one, get one 50% off deal. You can shop for almost anything online these days. Why not shop for blinds too? Listen, I have to tell you, I don't pay any attention to this stuff. My wife does it all, but blinds can really, really change a room. And now there's a new way to get these blinds. 3-Day Blinds has been in business for over 45 years and has local, professionally trained design consultants who have an average of 10 plus years of experience. That's why they are the highest rated blinds company on Trustpilot at 4.7 out of 5 stars. Just set up an appointment and you'll get a free, no obligation quote the same day. And if you're not very handy, the expert team at 3-Day Blinds handles all the heavy lifting. They design, measure, and install so you can sit back, relax, and leave it to the pros. Right now, you can get 3-Day Blinds, buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery for a free, no charge, no obligation consultation. Just head to 3dayblinds.com/Klavan. That's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to 3dayblinds.com/Klavan. One last time, that's the number 3, DAY, blinds.com/ you guessed it, KLAVAN. Chapter 1, New Phony, Who Dis? I cannot emphasize enough the complete phoniness of Kamala Harris. I mean, she is just an absent person. No one knows who she is or what she stands for. We kind of know she's a leftist, but we're not even sure of that because she changes all the time. One speaker at the DNC, and I don't know who this guy is, but this clip was going around. It seemed to be a little bit of a smaller meeting. One speaker at the DNC told the absolute truth of what's going on at the DNC. This is cut 9.
We got 70 days to act right, y'all.
That's right.
Now, after 7 days, we can go back there and crazy. Right?
70 days to act right, y'all, and then we can go back to being crazy. So that is exactly what Kamala Harris is doing. She's pretending to be a normal candidate who's not going to drag America into the same thing we've been doing for the last 4 years that has really destroyed the economy, not for the top 20%. They think it's great, but for the 80% of working people who haven't got, big investments and haven't got the big salary that's going to offset the inflation that has made everything so tough. The world has spun out of control since Trump. The wars everywhere that nobody seems to care to talk about. But all of that stuff, is going to go away when we elect the same person who's in power now. So here she is talking. We have to give this a shot because the thing you have to understand about the DNC, it looks totally different to Democrats than it does to us. So we've got to be in their mindset a little bit and understand that this stuff is playing with them because they are uber women and men who think like women. So there's cut 19, her talking about America.
We are the heirs to the greatest democracy in the history of the world. And on behalf of our children and our grandchildren and all those who sacrificed so dearly for our freedom and liberty, we must be worthy of this moment. It is now our turn to do what generations before us have done. Guided by optimism and faith to fight for this country we love, to fight for the ideals we cherish.
None of that meant anything, as you could tell, I'm sure. Those are meaningless, empty words that anybody, any politician of any stripe could have said. And remember, for Democrats, democracy in America means they win. It means, Chuck Schumer is going on CNN and telling people that they're going to get rid of the filibusters if they have the majority in Congress, so the minority will have no voice. They're going to curtail the Supreme Court somehow. They're talking about taxing everything in sight. Kamala gave the unity speech, but the unity, she said, I'm going to be president of all the people. I'm going to be president of all the people, she said. And then she delivered this on Trump. This is cut 22.
Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own party begged him to call off the mob and send help, he did the opposite. He fanned the flames. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse.
So she's going to be president of all the people except for the half of the people who voted for that terrible, terrible man. And this is typical politics. I'm not attacking her for it. I'm just saying that all of this stuff is empty calories. There's nothing that she said that had any meaning for what's going to actually happen in your life. The only thing we know about her is they love abortion. These free abortions, I have to say that they actually had a van outside giving abortions. It reminded me of some Nazi thing, like the death vans that they would carry you away, but this is the way they look at it. This is an actual thing that they think is a right. And let's listen to what she says.
Over the past 2 years, I've traveled across our country, and women have told me their stories. Husbands and fathers have shared theirs. Stories of women miscarrying in a parking lot, developing sepsis, losing the ability to ever again have children, all because doctors are afraid they may go to jail for caring for their patients. Couples just trying to grow their family, cut off in the middle of IVF treatments. Children who have survived sexual assault, potentially being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. This is what's happening in our country because of Donald Trump.
I do not believe a single word of that. I don't believe she saw it. I don't believe it's happening. I don't believe any of that is true. And of course, Donald Trump's actual approach to abortion is far more moderate than hers, which is that you can abort a child until I think he's 17 or something like that. No, you can abort a child until the minute before birth, which is not true in any European country on earth. It's not true in any civilized country. But that's Donald Trump's attitude is let each state decide what they're going to do, which of course is what the Supreme Court said. I would like to see it outlawed everywhere, but I think we have to win that fight in the culture, not in the law. It's not going to matter if we win it in the law because they can get around it. But this is, this reminded me of the Jack Nicholson movie, As Good as It Gets, where he plays a writer and somebody says, how do you write women so well? And he says, I just imagine a man and take away reason and accountability. The Democrat solution is the solution without reason and accountability. It's always getting rid of the results of your actions rather than stopping the actions. So you have a sexual revolution. Now there are all these unwanted babies. You have to be able to kill them instead of saying, well, maybe that's sexual revolution. Maybe we should be rethinking that. Maybe that was not such a good idea. No, absolutely not. That's just kill the babies. And that's the way you solve your problems. You saw how you end up solving your problems by killing people. The Wall Street Journal said this about Kamala Harris. Ms. Harris is no longer the vice president who failed to secure the border. She'll now be tough on illegal immigration. She's no longer the Veep who said Bidenomics is working while inflation reached a 40-year high. She's now the candidate who will reduce your family's food bill by going after your grocer for price gouging, which is a sure and certain formula for having empty shelves in your grocery. She's no longer the candidate of 2020 who questioned the need for cash bail and blamed police for urban violence. She's now the tough prosecutor who, as California Attorney General, dared to investigate Exxon. She's no longer the presidential candidate of 2019 who wanted to ban fracking, endorse Medicare for all, and question whether the current Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency should exist. Her campaign suggests she's changed her views on all that, although she hasn't said why or even been asked. And she hasn't said she's changed her views. Americans are expected to take her expedient leap from the left to the center on faith. And, you know, I'm sure you saw the news this week that 818,000 jobs that were said to have come into existence under Biden-Harris simply did not. They didn't exist. It's the biggest downward revision in the jobs numbers since 2009. And, you know, I think that the whole thing about inflation, as I've said before, is that it doesn't affect the rich people. This is why on the front page of the Wall Street Journal this morning, it said the economy is really doing well. It's really doing well for the people who write the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It is not doing well for most people. Now, here's the thing that no one has noticed and that you're going to hear from me first, and you probably haven't heard this from anywhere else. We keep complaining, and the people who want Trump to win keep complaining that he's got to stop doing the name calling and the personal attacks and talk about issues. But what no one has noticed is that this is exactly what he's doing. He has actually changed his tone. And I said this before the debate, that I said he's now running a different campaign. He's more disciplined. He is now running a different campaign. He's focusing on issues. He's starting to try and define Kamala Harris by what she's not talking about, by what she's not doing. He called in after her speech to Bret Baier on Fox and said, you know, well, if these are the things she doesn't like, she said he's complaining about these things, but she was in office all this time and she's still in office. This is what he said. This is cut 17.
It was a lot of complaining. She didn't talk about China. She didn't talk about fracking. She didn't talk about crime. She didn't talk about 70% of our people are living in poverty. She didn't talk about housing, really. The trade deficit. She didn't talk about child trafficking that she's allowed to happen because she was the border czar and she presided over the weakest border in the history of our country. It's an invasion. I was there today, as you know, Brett. It's an invasion of our country taking place at our border, our southern border. It's a total invasion. And now it's starting at our northern border also, through Canada. And she didn't talk about any of that because she talks, but she doesn't do. It's no action. But, you know, look, other than that, it was a nice-looking room.
And, you know, all right, and let's just hear one more clip of that conversation with Bret Baier at Fox, because he also went on and was very specific about the economy. This is cut 18.
People know where I stand. I lower taxes. She's raising taxes. She's going to give a tax increase of 4 to 5 times what people and companies are paying right now. The country will go into a depression if they do it. She didn't talk about interest rates. I mean, the interest rates are now getting close to record rates. People can't do business. Nobody can borrow money. People can't go to the American dream and buy a house because they can't afford the interest rates. And even if they could, the money isn't available. She didn't talk about any of that.
See, this is a different Trump. This is a Trump focus. He didn't call up and call her name. He didn't phone in and say all the funny stuff that we kind of enjoy about him. He actually went after her on her policies. Again, Trump is a very, very intelligent guy, and he's a natural campaigner. He knows exactly what he's doing. I said this before the last debate. I pointed out, and people weren't listening to me then either, but I pointed out that he had got a new discipline and was actually holding back a little bit and learning to be quiet and learning to dial it back. This is something new we're seeing, that he is focusing on the issues. And anytime he slips from that, of course, that's going to be the headline. But if he can get this off Fox News and into the general public, it's going to make a big difference. If that Trump that you just heard can show up for the debate, that's going to make a big difference, especially if ABC piles on him and gangs up against him, which I'm almost certain they'll do. And that will, I think, make him look actually sympathetic. He's changed his tune. He's talking policy, and the DNC is talking a fantasy. And the question is whether it's going to work. I mean, I'm telling you, she's going to get a bump from that. I think she's going to get a bump from this DNC as women and men who think like women are going to catch on and say this. But let's take a look at what this fantasy is. Let's be specific and look exactly at what this fantasy is. Many of you like to sleep on a comfortable mattress. I personally just like to lie awake on a comfortable mattress so I can experience the comfort. And that's why I have a Helix mattress. It isn't just a piece of furniture. It's a cocoon of comfort that wraps around me while I'm lying awake all night. Helix harnesses years of mattress expertise to offer a truly elevated sleep experience and an even better lying awake experience. Trust me on this. The Helix Elite Collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. If you're nervous about buying a mattress online, you don't have to be. Helix has a sleep quiz that matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress, because why would you buy a mattress made for someone else? I took the Helix quiz and I was matched with a firm but breathable mattress that I enjoy all night long. Helix has a 10-year warranty and you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it, but you will. Helix's financing options and flexible payment plans ensure that a great night's sleep is never far away. For a limited time, Helix is offering up to 25% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Just go to helixsleep.com/Klavan. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan. This is their best offer. It will not last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now, and better lying awake with KLAVAN. Chapter 2, Strength Through Joy. One of the things that this election is going to test, because it's such a fantasy and because the corrupt press is completely on the fantasy, one of the things this election is going to be a test of is how much power the mainstream media still has after the disastrous dishonesty of the COVID pandemic, after the dishonesty of lying about Trump over and over again, Russian collusion, nice people on both sides, all of that, and after the disaster of lying about Biden and what condition he was in. Are people going to go back? Because after a while, you deserve the lies you get. If you keep going back to someone who's lying to you, then you deserve to be lied to. And we're going to find out if America deserves this awful, awful press. So the whole theme of this convention was joy. Everything is joy. A very feminine theme, right? It's not what's going on. It's how you feel. So it's not just the convention, it's how it was covered. And this is the way the convention was covered, the idea of joy. This is clip 1.
Where there's a will, there's a sway, especially if it's the will to get fit and keep fit. The Strength Through Joy celebrations are taking place at Hamburg, and as the gay procession moves along the city's wide streets, the cause of physical fitness was never more loudly proclaimed. Dancers frolic through the square. Just behind them comes the English contingent. You ever see a finer body of girls? Strength Through Joy is the slogan, so laugh and grow fit.
All right, I'm sorry. That was a Nazi rally in the 1930s as covered by the British news agency Pathé. Strength Through Joy. It was supposed to make people feel good with fitness programs and free trips to cultural events and all that while Hitler consolidated power. And look, I always hate it when the Democrats compare every Republican to Hitler. I would never want to compare, the Democrats to Hitler. Obviously, they want to put their opponents in prison like Hitler did, and they censor the opposition like Hitler did, and they support policies that would end up killing 6 to 8 million Jews in Israel like Hitler did, and they use January 6th in the same way Hitler used the burning of the Reichstag as a make-believe emergency to jail opponents. But aside from that, there is no comparison to Hitler, and I don't want to sink to that level. But just the idea, the only comparison I'm making is the idea that they're doing this emotionally satisfying thing about strength through joy, and of course, all the dead Jews. And that's the only comparison. So here's Rolling Stone. And Nat Shinker Osorio is a political strategist and communications researcher for progressive campaigns. And this is what she says. Some argue that a winning candidate must tout policy prescriptions that majorities favor and eschew, or at least not bring up others. And sure, that feels like super logical advice. Support things people like and they will like you. But the notion that voters are studying policy positions to come to their preferences belies what we know of how humans come to judgments and what it takes to get a message to actually reach their ears. Unless the choir wants to sing your tune, the congregation won't hear the joyful noise and get off the couch to vote, let alone spread the word to potential new believers. As I have advised campaigns for over a decade, if you want people to come to your party, throw a better party. Very different, by the way, than what Thomas Sowell wrote in the Wall Street Journal today, reminding us that Ronald Reagan won over people. He had the same thing with the animus in the press, same lying press against him with Carter, the same failure, the same absolute Democrat failures being covered up, not quite as badly as they're being covered up now, but still badly. And Reagan got around that by talking to people as if they were listening. And I agree with Sowell on this. I think people are smarter than the press thinks they are. The press thinks that they're as stupid and as easy to manipulate as the press believes them to be. But I think the people can actually be reached through logic and by specifics. But listen, the Democrats are doing everything they can to bring strength through joy. And the coverage of this DNC has been one of the funniest parts about it. Here's how ABC News, remember, ABC is going to do the first debate. ABC, an executive at ABC is one of Kamala's closest supporters. They are an incredibly dishonest news entity. Here is their coverage of the DNC. Cut 7.
It was really a dance party. I can tell you, Little John made his way down this aisle not too long before we came on the air, David. It turned into quite the dance party here on the convention floor, and really a sigh of relief for so many delegates and so many Democrats who were concerned that after President Biden dropped out of the race, they had some concerns about whether or not this party was going to unify behind Vice President Kamala Harris. But that is exactly what is happening here tonight, David.
The ecstasy that just happened. I've seen a lot of roll calls. I've never seen anything like that. I'd tell you it was the best party I've been to in a while, but I don't go to many parties. It was the best party they had. And the significance of that is the energy that they will need to fight. I talked to a lot of delegates, and they say the same thing. Yes, this is a great time, but we got to go back into the trenches and carry this into the ground game, into raising money in order to win what they know is going to be a fiercely fought election.
So that's ABC, but they're corrupt. So let's listen to CBS. This is Cut 8.
It might be 90 miles away from you in Chicago, but the electricity and the energy that you guys are talking about, we can feel it in this room at the forum right here in Milwaukee, and those bracelets are shining bright here as well.
They're so excited. They're so excited. It's lovely to see the fellow Democrats excited. You know, I went on the New York Times and I searched for the words personal attack. And I got Trump continues personal attacks against Harris at a rally in Pennsylvania. Trump ignored his advisors and veered again into personal insults of his opponent. At news conference, Donald Trump says he's entitled to personal attacks against Kamala Harris. Mr. Trump suggested he has no plans to moderate the tone of his campaign, urged to focus on the economy. Trump leans into attacks on Harris. Now, luckily, the Democrats would never do that. So here you have the gracious, they go low, we go high, Michelle Obama. This is Cut 2.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs? His same old con. Doubling down on ugly, misogynistic, racist lies as a substitute for real ideas and solutions that will actually make people's lives better.
Now, to be fair, the media, which always attacks Trump for personal attacks, did hear these personal attacks and reacted very harshly against Michelle Obama. Here's just a kind of compendium of media reactions to Michelle's speech. This is Cut 3.
You could have a big, long, smart-sounding question here, but I'll just say Michelle Obama.
I think Michelle Obama's speech was probably the most effective, powerful political speech I've ever heard.
Best convention speeches I've ever seen by anybody in any circumstance.
She's probably the best non-political speaker in the country.
Probably the best speech I've ever seen.
There is no one who has a speech delivery like Michelle. No one on the political, in the political pantheon.
Boy, did Michelle
Bring it.
And she did it with her arms out, that sleeveless outfit, just wonderful. She was masterful, not only in her words, but in her expressions.
This was a masterful act of leadership. It was a sacred task. It was like an oasis. I didn't realize I had been in a spiritual desert.
Neither did I. I didn't realize it was a spiritual desert until I saw that image of Michelle floating above the sand. So this is what they're selling. Strength through joy. Did you ever see a finer body of girls than Michelle Obama? Strength through joy. This is what they're selling. Let's take a look. Now, remember, I'm not saying that women fall for this. I'm saying these uber women fall for this, who are the creations of feminism, the creation of turning men and women against each other, right? Which is not feminism. It's simply leftism in the guise of feminism. So you get this kind of women with overextended, emphasized female traits and female flaws, and you get these kind of weak men. So let's take a look at that in Chapter 3. You've got to prioritize your health, but it can be tough to do, and sometimes you're not sure where to start. That's why I'm excited to introduce Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning to know what's going on with your metabolism, meaning whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs, and then the app gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. Forget those one-size-fits-all diet fads. What sets Lumen apart is its ability to understand you on a personal level. I have one. I've tried it. They're really fun. You get an app. It tells you what you need to do. I don't have to stress about what I should be eating the morning after I take those late night romantic walks to the fridge and succumb to my cravings. Lumen's ability to craft a personalized nutrition plan for each day is tailored to my body's needs and goals, and that's been revolutionary. With Lumen, you're not just getting a device, you're getting a health companion. Breathe into it before and after a workout or a meal and gain real-time insights into your body's metabolic response. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Klavan to get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/Klavan for 15% off your purchase. Lumen, we thank you for sponsoring this episode and for sponsoring the fact that people can learn how to spell Klavan. I'm so lost in my own joke at this point. All I can say is Klavan. That's all I can say.
There are no easy things.
So why do these emotional things work with women? It's not just emotion. It is specific emotions. It is joy telling you that you're going to be happy, that this is going to make everything good for you. If you remember the interview we did, if you saw the interview we did, great interview with Batya Ungar-Sargon, who has written this wonderful book, Bad News, and now a new book, which I think is called Second Class. And she was talking about the fact that race has become a displacement for dealing with class, because the media, you can't really get a job in the media unless you are in the elite class. And the reason is, in order to get a job into elite media, you have to do a lot of internships. And you can only do internships if you can afford to live without getting paid. And you can only afford as a young person to live without getting paid if your parents are supporting you. So they have to have enough money to be supporting you while you do this internship and get yourself in the New York Times. And people have noticed that they go into these elite venues, these elite media venues, and everyone there is the son or daughter of a celebrity or a very rich person. And so they no longer know what is going on in the working classes, but they also don't care because they now have learned, been to the Ivy Leagues. One of the hilarious things about the DNC was people insulting the Ivy Leagues when they all went to the Ivy Leagues, when the Obamas went to Harvard and all the rest of them went to Yale, and they insult J.D. Vance because he went to Yale, but all of them are Ivy Leaguers. And so it's all pretend, it's all make-believe. And one of the things that Batya was saying was that race is a wonderful way to get rid of your class guilt, get rid of your elite guilt, get rid of your money guilt by addressing something that actually can't change. You can't change your race, and whatever problems grow out of your the culture of your race, you can't do anything about. But you can stop feeling the way you feel about it, and that's supposed to be doing something. So I don't know if you remember in the book Nellie Bowles wrote, Morning After the Revolution. She was another terrific interview we did. And remember, these are left-wingers. Nellie is a left-winger. Batya is, I would say, a moderate moderately on the left, a little bit on the left, but kind of moving, I think, she's in play. But these are left-wingers observing their own culture realistically. And Nellie, kind of like in Matt Walsh's new film, she actually went to all these trainings, these anti-racist trainings. And she said the anti-racism movement could shift from a political movement grounded in facts to an emotional and spiritual one. The battle did not need to be about structural realities and governments. It could be about ourselves. Objectivity, facts, it's all racist. Whiteness is a virus that kills. So what these classes do is they take these women and men who think like women and they say, oh, you have to get rid of your feeling of whiteness, your feeling of privilege. And that is a wonderful sense that you've done something when you've done absolutely nothing. Therapy which is a very feminine run profession, can also fall into that trap. I think therapy can be a really good thing, but a lot of times people mistake having a rush of emotion for actual practical psychological change, and it's not. And so, again, this is not just women being like this. It is people who are on the same page as this kind of uber femininity, this ultra femininity. Dana Bash, I think it is, from CNN, explains this while she's watching with great joy the DNC's Cut 6.
But they are doing so in trying to put forward male figures, Tim Walz being one of them, Doug Emhoff last night, who can speak to men out there who might not be the sort of testosterone-laden, gun-toting kind of guy who wants to listen to Hulk Hogan and the kind of players that came out at the RNC, or might want to listen to that, but also, in addition, understand that it's okay in 2024 to be a man comfortable in his own skin who supports a woman. And that's something that they really are trying to work on with male voters beyond the base.
So one of the things, I think I said this last week, but this is an iron rule for watching the media. Whenever the media tells you something is okay, it's not okay. Don't do that. Don't know, whatever it is. It's okay to cheat on your wife. It's okay to have to be a throuple. It's not okay. It's almost like just a little bell should go off every time you hear that. So they're saying this is a wonderful thing for low testosterone men who don't carry guns and don't want to be guys. They kind of like this, following after the boss girls. And this kind of culminated. This was so fascinating to me, this moment with Tim Walz. And Tim Walz is sort of selling himself as, I carried a gun in war, which he didn't. It's okay, as long as you felt as if you carried a gun in war. I'm a coach. They call him Coach Walz. They're emphasizing his male roles, but he's not being very male. And he had this emotional moment when he talked about his children. This isn't true either, by the way. He said we did IVF, but he didn't. They did some other fertility, treatment. But here he is talking about this as Cut 4.
If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call. The pit in your stomach when the phone had rang, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you.
All right. So while if you're listening to this and not watching, or if you didn't see the DNC because you were doing something more interesting, like staring at the lint in your navel, at this moment when he made this speech, he has a developmentally disabled child who was in tears, very, very emotional, and standing up and cheering for his father. And it was a very moving moment, I actually think. Here's the difference between men and women, okay? Picture a man and woman walking down a road together toward an opening in the road, a Y, a place where the road opens up and goes in two different directions. And the woman is talking about this moment when this child, as I say, developmentally disabled, stands up. I don't know exactly. I think he's autistic or something like that, and he doesn't have a very good command of language, stands up and he's crying and cheering for his beloved father. And the woman says, that was really, really nice. And the man says, you know what? It was nice. I have to admit, that was a very touching moment. Even I was moved by watching this. And the woman says, this Tim Walz, he can't be all bad if his son is reacting to him like that. And the man says, you know what, maybe you're right. It's very possible. Maybe he's not all bad. And the woman then says, therefore, I'm voting for this child communist who let Minneapolis burn to the ground. And she turns around, and the man has taken the other road. Okay, this is the place. This is the place. See, it's not that men have no emotions. It's not that they don't understand that these things happen, and that we don't have to pick on this poor child, and we don't even have to pick on the father's relationship with the child. It's at that moment when, therefore, I am voting for this guy who let Minneapolis burn to the ground, that the guy says, so long, I'm going down a different way and voting for policies that make America great again, even if this guy is sometimes a jerk. I mean, Tim Walz was a very, very left-wing governor. He guaranteed tuition-free college for students from lower-income families, which, by the way, is not, it sounds like a kind of nice thing, but remember, it's paying people to no longer be able to do the working-class jobs they're capable of doing. And he included in that free college undocumented immigrants, or as we say, illegal aliens. He wanted to allow illegal aliens to obtain driver's licenses so they could vote for him. He wanted to protect, obviously, abortion till the age of 3 or 4 or whatever it is, restore voting rights for felons, because who else would vote for these people? Strengthen background checks for guns. They're obviously coming after your guns. Increase state capital gains taxes on the rich. Some of these policies where they say we're going to tax unrealized gains, which means if your house is now worth more, even if you haven't sold it, they come and take money out of your savings that you have to pay to the IRS, which is a sure way to crash the economy too. The Minnesota Department of Education has got the initial version of a document that lays out how their new liberated ethnic studies requirements will be implemented in the 500 public school districts in his state. He signed a law establishing this initiative in 2023, where they'll teach first graders to identify examples of ethnicity, equality, liberation, and systems of power, because you wouldn't want to teach them how to add and read, right? So, his son cried, and some ladies are saying, oh, well, now I'll vote for Tim Walz. That's where they lose the men. Here is the uber female, Joy Reid. Joy Reid, I actually think Joy Reid needs a doctor, needs a psychiatrist, but she still has her job, and this is how she reacted to that speech. This is cut 5.
This is about modern masculinity.
Yes. Yeah.
And in the Democratic Party, the coach that is saying that it's important for him as the football coach to be the faculty, partner for the LGBTQ
Gay
club,
Straight Alliance.
The Gay Straight Alliance. And he's like, that's something important for me to do, because if a coach is doing it, it's going to have just a little more salience, right? And it's going to help kids not get bullied. I mean, what's really been fascinating is to watch the men of the Democratic Party model a kind of masculinity that is simply 21st century masculinity.
So when Joy Reid is telling you it's fascinating to me that Joy Reid should think she has anything to say about 21st century masculinity. Like, why would you think that? That's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like me talking about, what women really need to do. What women really have to do is this or that. So I try to be very careful about. I understand that women. There's a rumor going around that women are people and they are different individuals and they have different things that they want. And I try to be careful about that, but not Joy Reid. She's going to tell us what 21st century masculinity looks like. Let me show you what 21st century really looks like. Because Bill Clinton was also there and he gave this speech. This is cut 11.
And sure, I went to Jeffrey Epstein Island 27 times. It was fun as hell, the time of my life, but then Hillary killed him and I couldn't go anymore. So now I'm stuck with this.
All right, that was fake. It was a total AI fake. I don't want to fool you at all. But that's a lot closer to what really is happening in the Democrat Party with these men, these guys who pretend that they're supporting feminism. I wouldn't turn my back on them. Meanwhile, there was this wonderful moment when Donald Trump was giving his speech recently, and he was behind glass now because the FBI, who has tracked down people anyone who is in anywhere near the Capitol building on January 6th has now been tracked down and arrested. Anybody who ever had a thought that maybe abortion should be illegal has been arrested and raided. But the FBI can't figure out why this sniper tried to kill Donald Trump, or where he comes from, or what he was doing there. The FBI, that's a head scratcher for the FBI. So now they have Donald Trump encased in glass while he's speaking to keep him safe, because obviously the Secret Service isn't going to do it. And one of the people in the audience fainted, and Trump kind of almost without thinking just walked out from behind the glass, stepped outside, and went to help that person. And you know what? When you've got an Uber mail, you may get a lot of brash stuff. You may get a lot of boorish stuff. You may get a lot of stuff we don't like to see, that I don't like to see, because I don't believe in any of this Uber stuff. I believe men and women should be gentlemen and ladies. But you also get a guy who's willing to step out in front of a bullet and go help somebody. And that is something that you actually get from Donald Trump. So let's take a final look at what all of this means as we bring it together and now enter, remember, the real part of the election where people are going to either turn to reality or they're going to continue in this fantasy world. Life is full of surprises, but your insurance shouldn't be one of them. Policygenius, your trusted partner for navigating the complex world of insurance, is changing the way we shop for life insurance. Policygenius has licensed, award-winning agents and technology that make it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Their platform is incredibly easy to use. I've used it. You can compare quotes from top providers right from your phone or computer, all in one place. Plus, Policygenius has a team of licensed experts ready to answer all your questions and guide you through the process. They'll make sure you get the coverage you need without any of the hassle. What happens if you leave your job? Does that policy follow you? Does it offer enough protection for your family? Getting life insurance for you and your family will give you peace of mind, knowing that if something were to happen to you, your family can get back on their feet. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams, save time, money, and provide your family with a financial safety net using Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/Klavan or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Klavan. How do you spell it? That's the first test. Klavan.
Klavan, there are no easy things.
Final chapter, post-Christian politics. Now, what we're talking about is storytelling. The news is a form of storytelling. And because the Democrats own the news media, they are using the news media to tell their story, which is, and what stories are, is a way of conveying a certain inexpressible experience. That is why you have art. That is why you paint pictures. That is why you write music. That is why you tell stories, is to convey something that can't be expressed any other way. And what you're conveying is the internal human experience. You're conveying what it is like to be a human being in the world. And some stories are true and tell a true story about what it's like to be a human being in the world. And some stories are false. And what we're saying about the DNC is that they are telling an empty story, a story that is empty of content, but it only has feeling. Now, one of the things you notice if you're in the storytelling business, which I am, is that stories are more appealing to women, because they are expressing an inner sense of things. And women are very good at that. And, you know, when you live with a woman and you love that woman, you've at first, when you're talking to her, you think, I don't understand what this person is talking about. And then over time, you start to say, no, she's actually seeing something that I don't see. And if I learn to see it with her, I will see a three-dimensional world. And if she learns to see things the way I see it, she will see a three-dimensional world. And that is how men and women get together. That is the true transgenderism, right? Is that a man and woman together becoming one flesh begin to see things in a three-dimensional way. But certain kinds of storytelling, novels frequently, are more for women than men. And if you look at the bestseller list, it's all fantasies about magical girls getting banged really hard by muscular men. That is almost the entire bestseller list. Now, men like more action stories, obviously, but TV is more of a woman's medium because they don't have the money to do a lot of action. Movies more of a man's medium because it's a lot of action, spectacle, things happening. So different kinds of stories for different genders, and the news media is trying always, because it wants to make money and it wants our audience, is always trying to turn us into their audience. And their audience is now largely women. Men are getting their news other places because they've learned to distrust this emotional news that we're getting from the media. This is actually what's happening as we're watching. Now, all the news wants to do is reduce our politics to what they now call vibes, feels, right? It's all about, oh, he said this. And he said, oh, and he tweeted this. You know, I mean, it's like being with a bunch of girls. It's like, oh, he said this behind your back. He said, oh, he tried to hide it, but he said that, and he did this terrible thing. And guys are a lot of times saying, yeah, I'm sorry, what's his policy again? What exactly, could you run that by me? And how did that work last time? And that's a different way of thinking. That's not actually storytelling. That's actually just trying to look at the things that are going on. So the press is always trying to turn you into itself. That's how you get a guy like Jake Tapper humiliating himself until the end of human existence by coming on during COVID and saying, you should be afraid and you should let it dominate your life, right? I mean, what guy is listening to that and going, yeah, that's what I want. I want to be afraid. I want to let a flu dominate my life. No, that's not what men are thinking. It is what women and guys who think like women are thinking. So Chris Rufo, one of my favorite characters on the political scene, and a guy I've told him recently that I'm just waiting for the final civil war as the Republic falls so he can become emperor. We'll change his name to Augustus and Chris will become the emperor. He had an article in City Journal talking about the end of scandal. It's called Beyond Scandal. And he talks about the fact that Vice President Harris began her political career through a high-profile affair with Willie Brown, and her husband cheated on his first wife and got their nanny pregnant. And her vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, has embellished his military service to the point of stolen valor. And Harris has changed her positions on multiple issues. And these are scandal archetypes, which were once enough to torpedo a career, but now no longer. And former President Trump, Chris goes on, has survived a protracted sequence of personal scandals. His romantic life has splashed through the tabloids for decades. His political scandals as president included impeachment. After leaving the White House, they've included indictment, arrest, and conviction, and yet Trump endures. So the scandals are beginning to lose their weight. They're beginning to lose their impact. And he says, what is the significance of this shift in political life? A moralist might argue that we have entered a period of ethical collapse. The old Christian standard no longer holds. It would seem there is another possibility, however, maybe we have abandoned moralistic pretense and entered a period of greater realism. Now, I've talked about this. I talked about this from the very beginning of Trump's political career. I talked about the fact that he was a post-Christian candidate. And by that, I didn't mean that he was more wicked than anybody else. I didn't mean that he was a bad guy or anything like that. I simply meant that he was not, even in a hypocritical way, trying to embody Christian values. He would make fun of losers. That's the antithesis of Christianity. That's a very Nietzsche thing to do. He would talk about his money. I have this much money, and this guy's criticizing me, but he doesn't have any money. You probably don't remember all the way back to that original campaign, but that was one of the things. He mocked his opponents. He still did that, where he would make up names, a very un-Christian thing to do. The old Christian standard has been the honorable gentleman on the other side of the aisle says this, but the truth is such and such. And he was a post-Christian candidate. But the thing about American Christianity is it too has become a story, and it has become, in my opinion, a false story. The story that good men do good things and bad men do bad things, and that we judge a person on not the job that he's doing, but on his personal life. And this thing that the media has worked very hard to create, which is that the scandal is the story as opposed to the policies. Rufo goes on and says it should surprise no one that the lives of men and women who desire political power do not always conform to the dictates of private morality. We might expect them to be discreet, but we cannot expect them to be angels. Fortune often leaves us in a bind, offering us four possibilities: a good man who does good, a good man who does evil, a bad man who does good, a bad man who does evil. The first and the last offer an easy black and white choice. The second and third are much more difficult and much more common. They are almost always the reality from which we must make our choice. And so one of the things I get kind of attacked for sometimes is being very cold about politics. I don't really care about Donald Trump. He's not my pal. He's not my brother. He's not my daddy. He's not my son. He's just a guy he's a job interview. That's what he is. He's interviewing for a job. It's a big job, maybe the most powerful job on earth, but it's still just a job. And what I want to know is, can he do that job? Now, there's a level of corruption, like Joe Biden has a level of corruption that actually interferes with the work he does, because he's got his split interests. He's got his interests not just in doing a good job and making his name and all the personal ambitions that a politician has, he also has a money interest because he's corrupt. He's always been corrupt. And I think that the fact that they hide that is a shame, but that's in fact a scandal that actually matters. But I don't really care whether Donald Trump is nice. I wish, for the sake of the national dialogue, that he sometimes controlled himself, controlled his tongue. I've never met anybody who even loves Trump who didn't think the same thing, that they wish he would shut up sometimes. And I don't think he should have cheated on his wife. I don't think he should call people names and all that stuff. But I would vote for him over a sense of joy. I would vote for him over an inner sense of self. I'm not trying to elect the Messiah. I already have one. So this election, when I say this is an election between not a feminine way of looking at things in a masculine way, but this weird, distended, overblown femininity and overblown masculinity. When I say that this is a job, it really is a question whether we are going to feel good about America or whether we are going to get America back on track and make America great again. And I think you know where I stand. Our friend Dr. Jordan B. Peterson has completed yet another extraordinary 5-part series, Foundations of the West. Follow Jordan as he journeys through history with Ben Shapiro and other esteemed scholars, including, I believe, my son Spencer Klavan, no relation, to 3 important cities that gave birth to some of the most important ideas in history, government, religion, and freedom. The first 2 episodes are live now, with new episodes premiering every Sunday. But here's the catch. It's exclusive to Daily Wire Plus members. So if you're already a Daily Wire Plus member, start watching now. If you're not a member, we're going to take care of that. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Jordan for 35% off. You'll get unlimited access to Jordan's content on demand. Don't miss this. Join now at dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Jordan. Klavan Klapbacks.
Our vice president, she's fought on the side of the American people.
All right. That's a little commentary there. Klavan Klapbacks at dailywire.com, Klavan, and Klapbacks is also spelled with a K, Klap backs. Klavan Klapbacks at dailywire.com. Write in, tell us what you think of the show. We really like to hear from you. I really like to hear from you. I already know what I think, but I want to know what you're thinking, and I want to know where you agree with me. I want to know where you're wrong, and just write in, and we'll try and read as many as we can on the air. Now, I got a lot of letters, not just in Klapbacks, but also personally, about my Matthew Perry commentary in the member block. And I can't read them all, but I'll just read one of them and sort of add to that. This one is from Lisa. She says, on attributing Matthew Perry's addiction to his parents' divorce, I feel like you're doing single-factor analysis. Matthew Perry was also given phenobarbital, a highly addictive barbiturate, as an infant. I don't think that helped either. On divorce as a cause of childhood neglect abuse, as someone who has been in various child abuse recovery groups the past few years, the status of the family doesn't matter, at least from my experience. Children are abused in both unbroken and broken homes. I also got a lot of letters saying that I had kind of disrespected Alcoholics Anonymous. And so let me just clear up at least what I'm saying. First of all, you know, a lot of abuse takes place with step-parents, especially stepfathers. There is a lot more physical abuse with stepfathers than there are with actual fathers. But of course, you know, divorce is not the only thing that can happen. I mentioned that because in Matthew Perry's case, he opens his memoir with a very, very sad, you know, narrative about the divorce, and it clearly just blew his world apart. And I personally believe that not only does divorce, as I've put it myself, blow up the planet that the child lives on. I think Jeremy used that phrase in Lady Ballers, but that's something that I've been saying for many decades, that you're blowing up the planet that the child lives on, which is your marriage. That's why, you know, you shouldn't get into screaming fights with your spouse either. You should treat your spouse with respect and love even when you disagree, because that is the world that your child is living on. And it just blows it up. And I think that we have not calculated the endless trauma, the fact that trauma never, ever ends. And it's made worse by the fact that the parents often say, oh, we'll still be a family. Lie. It's going to be fine. Lie. You'll get over it. Lie. Oh, the kids are fine. The kids are very adaptable. Lie. All lies. It's just blowing up that planet, and the kid never gets over it for the rest of their lives, and it really affects everything. So I'm not doing single factor analysis, but I was noticing that was something in Perry's life that obviously affected him very deeply. Also, I'm not dissing Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm pointing out that their success rate is under 10%. I think it's around 5%. So for the 5%, that's great. And for anybody that it gives comfort to, that's great. And I think that it may be the best thing we have. 5% may be the best success rate anything has, right? So I'm not dissing it in that respect at all. But it means that maybe we need to totally rethink what addiction is. And maybe we need to start thinking about the fact that it's not a disease and that there is such a thing as the will. And I was talking about the fact that in therapeutic and psychiatric circles, you're not allowed to talk about these ephemeral things like will, love, the fact that we don't bond. We're not animals just having chemical reactions. We fall in love with each other. These are things, again, that have no material presence. And so you get a lot more prestige as a psychiatrist by selling people drugs. You could stand out in a corner and sell these garbage antidepressants to people, which work in a small number of people and are way, way, way overprescribed. I'm not telling you to get off your antidepressants. I'm telling you they are way, way overprescribed because science now tells us that these other things, these ephemeral things, don't exist. That was my point. And I think that addiction is a spiritual disease. And I think that is why nobody has found a way to really deal with it. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous comes close. They talk about the higher power and all this stuff. I do know it. And by the way, I have attended as a trainee, because I served on a lot of hotlines. I've attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings as a trainee to be on suicide hotlines. And I like their philosophy very much, but somehow it is not getting through. And it's probably because they don't worship Jesus, the only true God. But I just want to make a point that maybe we need to tear this all down and rethink about it from the ground up. And that was the only point I was making about this amazingly sad story about a guy who wins everything, he gets everything he wants in life, and just destroys himself. It's a riveting tale in that respect. All right, that's it. We've got to stop here. If you want to become a member, dailywire.com/subscribe. Use Klavan at checkout for 2 months free, or else the Klavanlessness just comes all that much earlier. And since the Klavanlessness is infinite, you want to stay away from it as long as you can and be a member and come to Member Block.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this field. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
white
folks,
white
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around?
There's a black person right here. Does he not exist?
They gon' say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
Just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gon' say you racist.
Buy your tickets now. In theaters September 13th. Rated PG-13.